There's a moment in every disaster where people don't panic. They pause. They look at each other and ask a simple question. What's going on? Chapter 3 exists for that moment. This is the chapter where the story stops being distant and starts becoming personal. Up until this point, the horror in the story has lived in labs, conferences, and conversations overhead through walls. Chapter 3 moves the danger into everyday life, restaurants, streets, apartments, places where nothing is supposed to happen. I wrote this chapter because most real catastrophes don't announce themselves with sirens or explanations. They arrive quietly, as confusion, as rumors, as something that doesn't make sense yet. And by the time it does, it's already too late. In early chapters, the narrator is watching, listening, following. In chapter 3, that distance disappears. The world doesn't wait for understanding. It interrupts dinner. It interrupts conversation. It interrupts normal life. This chapter is about the moment you realize you're no longer witnessing history. You're inside it. There are no answers in this chapter. No exposition. No comforting authority. No one telling you what's happening or why. That was intentional. Because fear doesn't come from monsters alone. It comes from not knowing the rules yet. Not knowing if this is temporary. Not knowing if help is coming. Not knowing if this is contained. What's going on? It's the most dangerous question in any story because it means the old explanations no longer work. I introduced Lynn here on purpose. Not as a hero, not as a victim, but as something grounding, someone familiar, someone real. Because horror becomes heavier when it happens in front of people we care about. This chapter isn't just about survival. It's about responsibility. What do you do when someone else is depending on you to understand something you don't? If you're a writer, chapter 3 is a lesson in restraint. You don't need answers to create tension. You don't need escalation to create fear. Sometimes the most powerful move is letting the audience sit in uncertainty. Ask yourself, when does your story stop explaining? When does confusion become the point? And how long are you willing to let your characters exist without clarity? Confusion, when handled carefully, is its own form of horror. Chapter 3 isn't about monsters. It's about the moment when the world feels unfamiliar and you realize it's not going back. What's going on isn't curiosity. It's the sound of certainty breaking. And once that breaks, everything else follows. This is chapter 3, and this is where normal life ends.